We've got another minute before we get started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everyone doing this evening? All right. Just checking out my platform here. It looks like we are streaming on all platforms. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, on YouTube, when you are on YouTube, you're going to see a little red button there that says streaming. Click onto that button. And when you click onto that button, it will take you right into the live stream. All right. For Facebook, for LinkedIn, for all the other ones, should be streaming right on your wall or your platform. All right. So let's do this. We can close that up. We're going to get ready to get started. We're going to do a little bit of a heavier show today than we usually do, ladies and gentlemen, because it's sometimes required. All right, so let's do this. Let's just do one more thing, just to make sure everything is working. All right, and always like to do that, live stream. And there it is. So you're going to have a little red button that says live in your YouTube. Just click onto that live, and that is going to bring you right into the, just click onto that live. See that? There it is. So it'll take you right into the live streaming. And that brings us right to where we are right now, ladies and gentlemen, in our live stream. So welcome, as I said, everybody. It's nice to have everybody here. And let's talk about it. So on a typical Monday for me, I have quite a few things that I need to get done. It starts with our morning meeting with the team, all the agents, and then it goes into setting up new clients, getting them pre-approved for a mortgage, setting up properties to go out and see with my clients, a show like this, students that I have to get prepped and ready. And so my Mondays are usually much, much bigger and larger and more hectic than your average person on a Monday. But I hear people say this all the time. How do you do it? How do you do it? And I got a little technique that I call the 7-minute technique, ladies and gentlemen. 7 minutes, 7 minutes, 7 minutes. And understand everything takes basically 7 minutes. And if you can work it in a 7-minute time frame and break your day down to a 7-minute time frame, you'll be surprised that 7 minutes and 7 minutes is 15 minutes, give or take a minute. And then do it again, you're a half hour. Do it again, 45 minutes, do it again, there's an hour. You'd be surprised that you can get 8 major accomplishments done in an hour. And so you'll be surprised what you can get done, not in a day, but in an hour when you start understanding that most things take about 7 minutes to do, ladies and gentlemen. 7 minutes to brew a cup of coffee and make it hot and put it together. 7 minutes to eat maybe 4 or 5 Oreo cookies. That's a major accomplishment for me right there. All right. So, but if you break it down, you'll see that in 7 minutes, you can accomplish a lot. And so start understanding the 7-minute rule, start applying it and see what you can do in a day, in an hour, when you start breaking things down to 7 minutes. What can I accomplish in 7 minutes? And so for me, that's been a very successful ratio, things that I'm able to accomplish in 7 minutes. And so this hour for me goes very, very quickly. So I put together this show, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say hello to all my friends and loved ones and families in Israel, in the Philippines, here in the United States, and so forth. I have family and friends across the United States, the continents, and I want to say hello to everybody. Say hello to all my friends and family, everybody that tunes in. I want to say hello to all the real estate agents that want to be real estate agents, all of you who are pursuing a real estate career. I want to say hello to the real estate agents. I've always come here to get a little bit more inspiration, because today is going to be a very inspirational class for agents, for brokers, and for those who want to become licensed real estate professionals. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen. So hello to everybody. Welcome to the show. I do this show every Monday, well, almost every Monday anyway, and I do it as a resource for those who are looking to do a little bit more research and trying to figure out where they would like to go, how they would like to pursue their real estate career, what school they would like to go to. I thank you very much for my reviews, ladies and gentlemen. I love the reviews, and the reviews are still coming in right now. So thank you. Thank you very much for your heartfelt and sincere reviews that you have been leaving. I can't thank you enough for them. So thank you very much for that. All right. So now, ladies and gentlemen, management. Most companies, most businesses succeed or fail due to management, the success of the company on the management or the failure of the company on the management. And sometimes we delegate our management decisions and to somebody who wants to become more. And so we figure that if we give someone who's looking to advance in the career, that they'll be more energetic, more motivated to do a better job and make management decisions as we go along. I don't know if that's always the best route to go, ladies and gentlemen, but delegation and delegating and not wanting to work or work less and less seems to be the norm that we're going to. So everybody's looking to get rich, but they don't want to work. So everybody's looking for that get rich quick technique. I don't want to go back to work. I like to stay home, sit on a sofa, make my money that way, be with the family, but get out of that 40-hour work week. See, that seems to be the mentality that we seem to be working. And then we're seeing a lot of folks realize that it's not really working out so well either. The entitlement check doesn't seem to be working out. The government dependency doesn't seem to be working out. Nothing really seems to be working out. And here's the reason. And I'll tell you why, ladies and gentlemen. There is no get rich quick scheme. There is no get rich quick scheme. You have to work to succeed. Bottom line, always been, always has been. Only those who are willing to put in the time and the effort will be the ones that will have the rewards when it's done and said. And here's another thing that most people don't realize, because when you are like us, entrepreneurs, if you're watching this show right now and you want to advance in real estate, then you have the entrepreneur blood going through your veins. But the problem for us entrepreneurs is we bore very easily. We get tired of one thing and we like to move on to another thing and on to another thing and on to another thing, which isn't a bad thing. It's just that sometimes we don't realize how much we accomplish. We are like sponges. We absorb a lot of information. We're able to learn lots of things very quickly, but we move on to the next and to the next and to the next. And for somebody like us, we really don't see our success. We actually think that we fail. As the years go by, we think that we haven't accomplished anything. What have we accomplished? Nothing. But in the eyes of others, they're like, wow, you're amazing. You've done this and you've done this. You've accomplished this. I can't believe the things that you've done. And so sometimes we don't see our own success. We don't realize our own achievements because we're so hungry and so busy achieving more and more and more that sometimes we don't actually realize what we have done, what we have accomplished until we get to look back from the eyes of someone else. You ever hear that expression? The grass isn't greener, always greener on the other side. So basically, we don't sometimes sit back and realize what we have accomplished. And we're pretty hard on ourselves. We always say, I haven't accomplished anything, haven't achieved anything. But ask somebody else about your life and they're like, man, it's amazing what they've been able to do. So things kind of work out that way. So in the real estate arena, what you're going to have to learn is representation. It's 101 representation. It's everything, ladies and gentlemen. As an investor, you want to represent yourself. And this is why a lot of investors find it a lonely trail, trying to represent yourself. And then you want to have other people's money involved. And then you end up having to represent your investors rather than yourself. So you kind of get lost in the sauce. If you realize that you are being paid very handsomely to represent others, then you will be on the right path to make a lot of money and have a lot of achievements, because many people will appreciate you for how you help them accomplish their goals of becoming a homeowner, selling a property for top dollar. And when you realize that you are in the representation business and you're representing others with their real estate related matters, you're going to go a long way in this business. A lot of people think about money. Money. I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, it's very easy in a capitalistic society that we're in today to think money, get rich. All I want to do is get rich. Everything comes down to money. But there is where you see a lot of failure, because it's never enough. It's never enough, ladies and gentlemen. The more you make, the more you need. So it really becomes never enough. Stop thinking about the money. The money is a byproduct of your management, of your services, of your representation. And when you stop focusing on the money and start focusing on helping others achieve their goals, then the money starts coming in. Then things start working out really, really well for you. And you're not focused on the money anymore. The bills, the money, the bills, the money, that preoccupies you. And that blocks your senses and holds you back. So start thinking about accomplishments in a different way. Rather than it being monetarily, make it fruitful, helping others achieve their goals, and you'll see the rewards come your way. But when you are representing others in this arena, you have to understand contracts and what the contracts are saying. We're actually going to delve into the contract in this class, which I don't ordinarily do in this 1 hour class. I talk about other things, about where you can go, what you can do, how you can accomplish it, because basically this class here is to try to demonstrate what you're going to learn in the real estate class. But one of the things that you are going to learn in the real estate class is the contract. At least in my class, I'm going to teach you contract. Now, let's understand a few things. For the state exam, the question will be, who do you represent? Now, I'm telling you that we are representing clients in the real estate matters, but when you're taking a state exam, they're looking for different, more specific answers. So in that situation, when they ask you, who do you represent? The answer would be the broker. You represent the broker, and the broker will represent the client. But you'll then understand that you are an extension of the broker. You're an independent contractor and you represent the brokerage. So you are, in essence, the broker as well, not licensed broker, but as an octopus extension of the broker, you represent the client through the brokerage. So you represent the brokerage and the brokerage represents the client. But when you get to this level, ladies and gentlemen, and you are out there working with buyers and sellers, then you need to know what they are signing, what they are agreeing to. And this is called, when we start getting into the class, contract law. Now, it's interesting. It's an oxymoron. First of all, we're not allowed to practice law in the real estate arena unless we're licensed to do so. So we're not allowed to practice law, but we are supposed to understand law, many laws, federal law, state law, local law, contract law, agency law, so forth. Even though we're not allowed to practice law without a law degree or a law license, we do need to understand it, because we will be having our clients sign contracts. And because our clients will be signing contracts, we need to be able to explain what they're signing so that they understand what they're signing. And this is what we call contract law. And again, oxymoron, you're not practicing law, but the contracts that our clients do sign, we should be able to make sure that they understand what they are signing. We talk about the deed. You hear me take the deed, the difference between title and deed. And then you have to understand that there's other real estate that we represent. It's just not residential property. It's commercial, it's condominiums, it's co-ops, it's timeshares, it's campground memberships. It might even be cemetery plots, mausoleums, and mosques. So all these things are real estate, and you need a license, a real estate license, to do all of that. So from the selling a single family property to a commercial building, to a co-op, to a condominium, to a timeshare, campground memberships, even holes in the ground, ladies and gentlemen, for your eternal resting place, for coffins, for mosques and mausoleums, you need a real estate license for all that, ladies and gentlemen, at least in this state, in the state of Pennsylvania, to legally transfer property and to legally earn any kind of compensation. Then you need a real estate license for all that. So what I'm going to talk about today is residential property and condominiums. I want to deal with them today because in our contract, one contract does both of them, but there are different understandings of the two. Now, there's two different laws under the contract, which is known as the condominium law and horizontal property law. And that applies to when we are buying or selling condominium. We have to understand that there are laws, state laws that apply, called condominium law and horizontal property law, so that you understand the rules, the regulations, the bylaws, the resale certificate, the common elements, both vertical and horizontal property laws and so forth. And yeah, it sounds difficult, ladies and gentlemen. It's not. It's really not. It's templated after a while, just like everything else. But understanding the contract is crucial. And in the real estate fundamentals is the law, but in real estate practice, the two things that you need to know in order to take the state exam: 75 hours of real estate practice and real estate fundamentals. One's 30 hours, one's 45 hours, coming out to 75 hours. The state wants you to have a general understanding of these two topics so that you can represent others under a guidance of real estate law and rules and regulations. So we'll talk about that in the class. So the Real Estate Commission, which is our enforcement agency, wants to make sure that the public is protected from us, the licensed real estate professionals. So in order to do that, there are rules and regulations by the Real Estate Commission and laws by state representatives and the governor. So the laws and the rules and regulations. And in that, there's an understanding of contract law. And again, as I said, we're not practicing law. We just have to understand the law. And so this is what we need to know, the contract. And so what I want to do with the class today is go over the contract, let you actually see some parts of the contract and understand what we need to be explaining to the client. As I said, this is a much more advanced class that I'll deal with today on Monday, which I won't really do. But I think the time has come so that you understand working with a buyer and seller is never really going to be a problem in this industry. But working with the other agent, working with the other broker, and the knowledge that they have or don't have is always going to be the issue that we deal with in the real estate arena. And unfortunately, some really don't understand the contract very, very well. And some think they understand it and don't. But also it comes down to interpretation. A judge might interpret the contract differently than another judge. So it gets to be tough when it comes to the law, ladies and gentlemen. But if you have just these general understandings of things, then it will go a long way when you represent others in the real estate arena, and you can see why you should be able to make $100,000 or better every year in the real estate arena if you do have the general understanding of these things. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, there's our first 20 minutes into this 1 hour class. Let's get into the contract. share this with you. And this is known as a standard agreement of sale that we use here in Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen. And our agreements of sales are usually put together by our association. As you can see here, this would be a PAR form, which is known as the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. It's 3 branches. There's the NAR, the National Association of Realtors. Then they break it down to each state, which would be the state association. Here for us, it's Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. Then they break it down even further to local, Bucks County Board of Realtors, Montgomery County Board of Realtors, Greater Philadelphia Board of Realtors, Lycoming, and so forth. So again, National Association of Realtors, NAR. For us here in Pennsylvania, it's PAR, Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. And then you have your local realtors, County Board of Realtors, and so forth. So our forms that we use in 1 to 4 residential properties, it's templated. And all we're allowed to do as licensed real estate professionals is fill in the blanks. Our contracts are already prepared for us, approved by the Attorney General's office and Arillo, which is our licensing and all our law firms underneath and behind the scenes. And so these forms are updated to stay in compliance with all the changes that are taking place. Because every time we have a new president, ladies and gentlemen, that president could add things to the tax code, add new laws, that could be signed. And now that new administration, whether you like the president or don't like the president, has an effect on the real estate arena. And so we have to stay up to date. And this is why we have to do a continuing education class every 2 years. The state requires us to renew our license and take a 14-hour continuing education class every 2 years to stay abreast of the changes in the market, the economy, and so forth. What's happening with interest rates, what's happening with supply and demand. So the contract is what we work with. And it looks like a lot. I understand it looks like a lot because this is kind of the actual size of it. And it looks like a bunch of mumbo jumbo scribble. But you'll realize that the contract is really broken down into 32 sections. All right. So section 14 and section 19, 17, 18. And so understanding that there are 32 sections, and we'll talk about these things in the classroom and what they mean and so forth. But what I want us to do today is work with 2 different types of buyers and sellers. And that would be the residential buyer and seller who's selling a 1 to 4 unit property. Let's take a single family property, 3-bedroom home, and that seller of this single family property, 3-bedroom home, doesn't matter how many bathrooms there are, just 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, doesn't matter. What this seller has to do is produce a ready and marketable title, which we call good and marketable. A lot of agents don't understand this, but this is called good and marketable. What this means is that the seller has to produce a good and marketable deed to the property. And as you can see that this is in the contract, this is what the buyer and seller would be signing. Buyer, seller, initial and sign. So they're agreeing to the terms. And what this is called the language of the contract. It's already written. So it's the language of the contract. And your job is not to prepare a contract that would be law. Your job is to explain the contract and just fill in some blanks. That's basically what we are allowed to do under our Pennsylvania licensing requirement of a real estate agent. But we do need to explain it to the client. And so the seller is responsible for good deed, good title. Now, first of all, what's the difference between deed and title? The deed is the written instrument. We transfer property by deed. All right. So once it's called delivery and acceptance. Once at the settlement table, I deliver the deed to you and you accept the deed, you become the owner of the property at that moment. And of course, we want to make sure that the deed is marketable. There's no liens, no judgments or anything like that against the property. And this is the 75-hour class. It talks about all this, and especially my class. So the deed, and we transfer property by deed. But what is title? Title is actually a process, a four-step process of making sure that the deed is good. Title search, abstract the title, title commitment, title insurance. And so briefly, so title is a process of making sure the deed is good. But our legal language and real estate language certainly blends together in a contract. And so you'll see legal language and real estate language blending together. And that's why it gets to be difficult when it comes to earnest money, deposit money, insures, what's the difference between marketable and equitable and so forth, and the difference between deed and title. So title is the process. The deed is the written instrument that transfers the property from one person to another. But that's what the seller has to produce a good and marketable deed. And if they can't, the seller would be out of contract. So, and that's what this says here. The property will be conveyed. Conveyed means to be transferred with good and marketable title. So as a real estate agent, especially a student of mine, I'm teaching you the contract in the class, which a lot of schools would not do because it's an advanced class to understand the contract. But me, and I'm sure the state, wants the student to have as much knowledge as they possibly can so that they can be the best they could be when they start representing. The state does not want to deal with negligence and incompetence. The state does not want to deal with a lot of complaints. It really falls back onto the school and the broker, who should have made sure that the agent understands what they're supposed to be doing so that complaint did not have to be filed in the first place. So the state does appreciate the extra work. And since we're a 75-hour class, not a 60-hour class anymore, the contract is supposed to be a requirement in the classroom today so that the students have a better understanding of the contract before they actually go out there and start representing. But as I said, management 101 always comes down. Is it a good school? Is it not a good school? Is it a good brokerage? Is it not a good brokerage? Is it a good real estate agent? Is it not a good real estate agent? All comes down to management, how you manage your ability. So knowing the contract and understanding the agreement of sale is crucial for you in order to represent your client. So the seller has to produce a good deed. That means, ladies and gentlemen, there could be no liens, no judgments, no encroachments, no encumbrances against the deed that would prevent the free transfer of the property to the buyer, and the buyer will be able to transfer it later on. So this is what we're talking about by good and marketable. Nothing on that deed is going to prevent the buyer from legally taking possession of the property and legally doing what they want with the property legally. All right. So we're not talking about zoning. We're talking about the deed here. And now the buyer who can buy this property, no liens, no judgments, can go ahead and sell it later on the same way. Marketable, good and marketable. So this is a language, a legal language that we talk about in the real estate arena, which means that the deed is not encumbered in any way. We can do title insurance and so forth. We'll talk about all this, but the first thing that you need to know is the seller needs to produce a good and marketable deed. When it comes to condominiums, a little bit different. In the condominium situation, we have right here, first of all, condominium law. So first things first that we need to understand. So we'll talk about condominium, and what the contract wants us to first know is the law when it comes to condominium. And so let me read this to you. Condominium and association, could be homeowner association, could be a condominium association, but it says property is not a condominium or part of a condominium unless checked below. That means that once we put a little check in this box here, a little X, a little check in here, then condominium does apply. And the condominium law does apply. So let's just assume that this is a condominium in Center City somewhere. It doesn't have to be in Center City, but it's a condominium run by a condominium association. So now we're going to check this box, and here's the law. So first of all capital letters. We'll talk about all bold, all capital letters later. The property is a unit or a condominium that is primarily run by the Unit Owners Association, then this is the part of the law that applies. Section 3407 of the Uniform Condominium Act. This is the law, the Uniform Condominium Law of Pennsylvania requires that the sellers of these condominiums furnish the buyer with what's called a certificate of resale. This is important, the certificate of resale. You won't get this when you buy a residential property, when you buy a commercial property. It's only going to apply when you buy a condominium because of this law. And it says that the seller has to produce this resale certificate. Now, if you are buying a condominium, you are the very first purchaser of this condominium, then this would not apply. But if you're the second, third, fifth, 100th buyer of this condominium, then in order for you to buy the condominium, the first thing that we need to know is the resale certificate. But that's not all. There's other things. We also need copies of the condominium declaration, which is known as the rules and the regulations, the bylaws, and rules and regulations of the association. So what we can and can't do and so forth. So this is a gated community. And since you're moving into an association, condo association or homeowners association, you have to understand what you can and cannot do. You also have to understand common elements, what you own and what you fractionally own as well. So condominiums are different than a house. Anybody can sell residential property. Well, I shouldn't say anybody, but it's a lot easier to sell a residential property than it is to sell a condominium. Now, we just discovered that there's a law. This is one of two laws that deals with the condominium. Here's what good and bad property brokers know and don't know. This gets a little convoluted here in this contract when we deal with condominiums, because first it says that we just talked about what has to be produced by the seller, but now we're going to talk about the time frame. And it says within 15 days from the execution date. This is the day that the seller signs the contract. We'll talk about offer and acceptance in the classroom, but this will be from the day that the seller signs the contract. Seller, at seller's expense, will request from the association a certificate of resale, because by law, the seller does have to give it to the buyer of the condominium. And they're also going to request those other documents that we just talked about that are necessary to enable the seller to comply with the law. All right. The law provides that the association is required to provide these documents within 10 days of the seller's request. Now, we could have a whole month go by here. We could wait 15 days from the date that the contract was signed before the seller even requests these documents. And from that point, we can wait another 10 days before the condominium even provides it, if they do at all. Notice what the next one says. Seller will promptly deliver to the buyer all the documents that they do receive and requested from the condominium association. But under the law, the sellers are not liable to the buyer for failure of the association to provide these certificates in a timely manner, or for any incorrect information provided by the association in the certificate. So here's where sloppy management comes in, especially if you're a broker representing the seller of the condominium. You can get real sloppy and just simply blame the condominium. That's the condominium's fault. They didn't provide it. It's not us, the broker's fault. It's the condominium's fault. That's the way it is sometimes. Very sloppy, very sloppy. But you can hide behind that. So if the broker's representing a seller in a condominium, they did not do their due diligence to really do a good job of representing the seller at this state in time, they can waste almost a month after we have a contract and then pretty much not even produce it and blame the condominium for that fact. But now it comes back to the agent or the broker who's representing the buyer to figure out what we need to do if we do get to that point where we're not getting the documentation for one reason or another. So now it says the law provides that the buyer may declare this agreement void, so it had no legal significance at any time before buyer receives these association of the documents. So let's take the first day. We waited 15 days, another 10 days. Let's just say that we waited a whole month, 25 days, and we finally do get it. But anytime before that, 25 days before we do get it, the buyer can say, you know what? Nah, I changed my mind. It's been a month already, didn't get anything. I'm done. All right. So up to this point, the buyer could change their mind to say, I'm out. Forget about it. It's been 25 days, still don't have the documentation. I'm out. Or let's just say that now, 25 days later, 30 days later, we do get the document. Now we got 5 days after receiving all the document to decide if we want to stay in this deal or out of this deal. If we don't get any of the documentation, so back here, the brokers blaming the condo association for not providing any of the documentation, then we have all the way up to capital and bold. Well, capital is a bold, yep, capital and bold, up to settlement. Because we never received, the buyer never received any of this documentation that was required by law, was never provided by the other broker, and they could blame the condominium if they want. It's their fault. I'll share it in a second, but they could blame the condominium if they want. And now all the way up to settlement, buyer can say, forget about it. I'm done. I don't want to go through with the deal. So this is a complete waste of time for everybody involved, because at the very beginning, it was sloppy management. All right. So whichever occurs first. So we got the paperwork 5 days or settlement because we never got the paperwork. Buyer's notice to seller has to be in writing upon, this is called a release and hold harmless in my brokerage as well. A release, so buyer's notice to seller must be in writing. Upon buyer declaring this agreement void, all deposit monies will be returned to the buyer according to the terms of Chapter 26. That's if the broker's holding deposit. Now, complete waste of time, because now we got all the way to the end and nothing's happening. Buyer's out of it. And this talks about first right of refusal, which we'll talk about more in the classroom. This gets us out of the contract, and we'll talk about first right of refusal in the classroom. If the condominium association exercises its right of first refusal, then the whole contract is null and void and everybody gets their money back. It's another problem. So here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, in the condominium, the broker who's representing the seller has a responsibility in the condominium, and in the sale of the property, the broker who's representing the seller has a responsibility. So the broker who's representing the seller needs to make sure that the seller of a residential property has a good deed, no liens, no judgments, no encumbrances, and the broker who's representing the seller of a condominium should understand that we need the resale certificate, the bylaws, the rules, the regulations, and so forth. All these things by the law. If, and I say if, because you know how many times I'll ask a broker who's representing the seller, how's the deed? They have no clue. You know what they're going to say? Well, the buyer has to order the title report, because that's what it says here. Within 7 days, the buyer will order from a reputable title company for delivery to the seller a comprehensive title report. So the agent who's representing the seller will say, well, the buyer's got to order the title report. Yeah, this is true. It says that in the contract, but that does not excuse the fact that you, the brokerage who's representing the seller, has no clue how the deed is. Is there any liens, any judgments? And you see deals fall apart like this because now we find out after the buyer did order the title report that the seller cannot produce a good and marketable title. And now we have a problem. Why? That's because the broker who is representing the seller could have done a better job, a much better job of knowing how the deed is. Constructive notice, actual notice. We'll talk about this in the classroom as well. So if the broker had done a better job and knew if the property could be sold, if the property was encumbered, if the property had liens or judgments against them, especially a special assessment that nobody even knew about, then we wouldn't be running into a problem where the deal could be dying because the deed is not good and marketable. And that runs into the same problem with the condominium. The broker who is representing the seller of the condominium could have did a better job, a much better job of trying to get all these documents ahead of time so that when they do get an offer on a property, really only the 5-day rule would apply. 5-day. But comes down to management, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll see sloppy management all the way through. Now, some brokers will say, well, you can't order a resale certificate unless you already have an agreement of sale. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that might be true in maybe 3% of the condominiums. And even then, that is violating the law by not allowing the condo owner to have that constructive notice and actual notice available. So I doubt very much that a broker can get away with saying, well, we couldn't get the resale certificate until we actually had an agreement of sale on the property. That kind of doesn't really make sense. If you are the owner of this condominium and you're paying your condo association fees, your assessment, and when you took the bylaws and rules and regulations, you should have known when you would be able to have that resale certificate and rules and regulations to comply with the law, to comply with constructive notice and actual notice. It's a hard case to try to go in front of the judge and say, Your Honor, I did not know, and use lack of constructive knowledge to try to get away with it. It's a hard sell. So what I like to do, ladies and gentlemen, is teach management. Best people in the business are those who know how to manage their business. And if you understand the contract, if you understand the terms of the agreement of sale, then you will be able to represent so much better. Now, notice, I told you there's 32 sections in the agreement of sale, and I just dealt with section 14, just a couple paragraphs in section 14 and section 16, 2 of the 32 paragraphs in the agreement of sale that we just dealt with, dealing with just seller's end, because we didn't really too much deal with the buyer's end. Just gave you 2 examples of the seller's responsibility and what the seller needs to do. The seller needs to produce a good deed if they're selling a property, or they need to produce the legal documents of the association for the buyer's review by law. So the seller has certain responsibilities. The buyer has certain responsibilities. You, the licensed real estate professional, you need to understand this. You need to know the language of the contract. You need to know how to represent the buyer and how to represent the seller. And if you don't understand the contract, if you don't understand the agreement of sale, it's very, very difficult to represent. Most real estate agents know how to do this. Initial here, sign here, initial here, sign here. That's basically it. And they don't know how to explain the contract. So when you come to my class, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get this detailed knowledge, just like I did. This is a 1-hour free class. And then there's just this little, what was 20 after when we started the contract, it's now 40. It's been 20 minutes. So if you do your 7 minutes, we did 3 7-minute segments, 7 minutes, 7 minutes, 7 minutes. And look what you learned in those 3 7-minute segments of what the seller's responsibilities are, selling a single family property, what the seller's responsibilities are, selling a condominium. You also now learned that we have residential property, commercial property, condominiums, timeshares, co-ops, campground memberships, even holes in the ground for eternal resting area. And we now learn that we need a real estate license for all that. And so 7 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, if you start applying the 7-minute rule, you will be surprised what you can do in an hour and what you're capable of learning hour by hour and what you can get done in a day. As an entrepreneur, we're pretty good at procrastinating. It's one of our traits that we like to keep putting things off, We'll get it done, but we like to keep putting things off. And this is called micromanagement. And now we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get it done. And we pat ourselves on the back when we do get it done, because we did get it done, but don't we make it hard on ourselves? Don't we wait to the last minute? So if you start applying the 7-minute rule, ladies and gentlemen, you will start to understand that you can manage yourself, your business, your life so much better by understanding the 7-minute rule. And so these are the things that I like you to understand. This is just the beginning, just the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. And this is why when you read my reviews, my students are very much appreciated because I'm teaching you some of the stuff. This is called real estate fundamentals. And real estate fundamentals is like, but you got to understand it. You got to understand federal law, state law, local law, fair housing law, discrimination law, agency law, contract law, because all these things apply. And this is why each state has their own licensing requirement. And the state requires that you take at least a 75-hour class to get a grasp. Hopefully it's a good school that gives you a good grasp of the things that you're going to need to know so that you can go out and represent others and help others. And so understand my class, at least I do the best I can to try to make sure that my students understand the language of the contract and the language of who you're representing. You're not representing yourself. And the state wants you to understand that you're not representing yourself. And the state wants you to understand that they're there to protect the public from you, the licensed real estate professional. They're there to make sure that you understand what you can and cannot do as a licensed real estate professional. One of the things that you probably think you can do, because you read a lot of investment books, would be assignments and assumptions of mortgages, assignments of contracts. You hear that all the time, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? Assignment of mortgage, yes. Assignment of contract, no. And there are a lot of folks out there who don't have a real estate license who think they can do this. And it's tough, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell real estate through a contract and try to make money in the process of selling a contract, a right for somebody else to buy the property. And when you really had the seller under the impression that you were going to buy this property for a certain amount of money. And if you could not assign the contract to somebody else in the time frame, then you are going to go through with the sale of the property. And this is what a lot of these wholesale retail flippers, which is very questionable as far as legality. If they don't have a real estate license, it's completely illegal. And then you'll see that the Section 8 of the law says that the buyer gets to choose their own settlement company, their own title company. They could choose in the negotiations to use the seller's title company, but they get to choose. They are not forced to use the seller's title company. That would be a violation of the law. Again, see how the law applies, and you need to know. So Section 8 of the law says that the buyer gets to choose their settlement company. They could not be forced to use the seller's title company. But in these wholesale retail assignment of contracts, you'll see that the seller of this contract wants the buyer to use the seller of the contract's title company. See, there's another violation of the law. And so we have to be real careful of how that works, because what this person's trying to do is make money off of the contract. I agree to buy your property for $50,000. I have a contract. I'll buy it for $50,000, but I want the right to sell the contract to somebody else. And the seller goes, yeah, I don't care. As long as you're giving me my money when we are paid. They say, you're going to give me $50,000 for the property? Fine. You want to sell the contract and try to make some more money? That's fine. So now I got, let's say, 2 months to try to assign this contract or sell the contract to somebody else. I'm buying the property for $50,000 and I want to try to sell the contract for $77,000. So there's $27,000 I want to try to make on this wholesale retail flip of a contract paper. And is the seller aware that you're trying to flip the contract for $77,000? Well, I don't know about that. It might be a little some shady. Maybe the seller is aware, maybe they're not. But in any event, the seller's still expecting their $50,000 at the end of the 60-day contract. But most of the time, these wholesale retail flippers can't get the contract sold. They end up not going through, and the seller ends up not getting anything. They didn't get the property sold for the 50 as agreed. You didn't flip the contract, and I ended up a waste of 2 months with these wholesale retail flippers. The other thing that you need to know is the mortgage itself. In the mortgage, there's what we call an alienation clause, not in every mortgage, but you need to look for it. Alienation clause is also known as a due on sale clause. And there's also the acceleration clause, which is in every mortgage. And if you try to do an assignment or an assumption and the bank was not aware and there was this due on sale clause or alienation clause in there, well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? You can't do this assignment of contract without the bank's permission or the lender's permission. And if you do, it could cost you big time because they can accelerate the entire loan and call the entire loan due and payable through the assignment or the assumption of that mortgage. So you really do need to have a fine understanding of representation, the law, and what things you can and cannot do in the real estate arena, ladies and gentlemen. So if you don't have a real estate license, then you don't understand the ethics, which is your proper behavior. You don't understand the law, and you certainly don't understand representation, because without that real estate license, the only person that you're trying to represent is yourself. And as a real estate investor, that's fine. You might not want to get a real estate license if you want to be a real estate investor. Again, keep in mind, once you do become a licensed real estate professional, then you will be now required to disclose the fact that you are a licensed professional. You hold a real estate license. You won't be able to buy and sell real estate without the disclosure of the fact that you are a licensed real estate professional. So if you want to be slim shady and you want to be a real estate investor, you might not want to become a licensed real estate professional, because as I said, a licensed real estate professional is trained and understands how to represent others. This is how we make our bread and butter. This is how we make our wealth. This is how we grow our business. And this is how we make so many people so grateful and happy, because we now know how to represent them so that they can go on to buy a property, they can go on to sell a property, and then they recommend you to others because they're so grateful that you help them buy or help them sell, that they'll refer you to others. And now your business is growing because you didn't worry about making money. It wasn't about how much you can make. It was about what you could do. Zig Ziglar used to say, get what you want in life by helping others get what they want in life. Now, he said it more elegantly than I just did, but that's the premise of it. Succeed in life by helping others succeed. Get what you want by helping others get what they want in life. And that is the real estate arena, ladies and gentlemen. In this arena, it doesn't matter what age you are. You could be legal capacity, legal age, 18 years of age or older, all the way up to a good old ripe age of 108. I think the oldest person was 117 that passed away. So we have what we call centennials, people who are over the age of 100. 80 is not old anymore, ladies and gentlemen. 60 is certainly not old, all right? And this is why federal government wants to raise retirement age from 62 into the 70s, because people are living longer and healthier. And so 70, 80-year-olds are still vibrant, still ready to rock and roll. And so what do they want to do? They're not ready for a rocking chair. Real estate is perfect. Perfect, especially if they're social butterflies and they still want to help others. So you could do real estate all the way up until a ripe age of 117 years of age, ladies and gentlemen. There's no discrimination. You can't discriminate and say, oh, you're too old to represent. All right. But there is legal capacity, which is 18 years of age and of sound mind. And we'll talk about what sound mind is. We're not doctors. We can't say who is crazy, who's not crazy. What does sound mind mean? For us in the real estate business, it basically means if they understand what they are signing and they understand the transfer of real estate, then that's sound mind for us. That's as far as it goes for us in the real estate arena. We're not psychiatrists, we're not doctors, but we do have to understand legal capacity. And legal capacity is 18 years of age and of sound mind. So even though we're told that we cannot practice law, well, certain things, we can't recommend what title you should take to your property. We can't write up a contract from scratch. That would be practice of law. We have to understand what line in the sand we're allowed to get to, but can't cross over, because then it would go from real estate representation to legal representation. So telling somebody, oh, you should take title under joint tenancy, well, now you're practicing law. Or four people say they own a property and you say, well, you're the owner of the property. What made you make that decision? Or here's another thing that you see, well, you're not allowed to record phone calls. Oh, really? So, because right now you're practicing law. So tell me exactly what you mean, because we have CRMs that record every phone call. We have apps on the phone that record phone calls. And so tell me, since you're telling me you're not allowed to legally record, you ever go to listen to Judge Judy? She'll listen to phone call conversations all the time. So tell me, when you say, well, you're not allowed to legally record a conversation, tell me where you got your law degree, because see what you just did there? You skipped the line. You went from being a real estate agent to practicing law and telling me what you can and can't do legally. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we have to be very careful about. So telling somebody how they should take title to a property, saying who owns a property, who doesn't own a property, writing up a contract, or simple things like, oh, you're not allowed to do this legally, you're not allowed to do that legally. Well, now you're practicing law. You got to be very, very careful. So the Real Estate Commission wants you to understand what you are allowed to do under your licensing requirement, agency, and what you're not allowed to do, agency. All right, this is a word that escapes a lot of people. What is agency? Buyer agency, seller agency, dual agency, designated agency, and then we also have what's called transactional licensee. These are the things that the state is saying you can do under your license requirement, what you can and can't do. We'll talk about it. It's called the consumer notice, the very first form that we give everybody, and it explains agency. What is agency? Services or employment that we're allowed to render under our license requirement. So we talk about all these things in the class, ladies and gentlemen. So this was certainly a heavy duty 1 hour presentation, because we actually delved into law and we delved into the contracts and talked about two different particular sellers, a seller of a residential property and a seller of a condominium. And so I want you to understand what you are getting in store for. It's not an HGTV episode, ladies and gentlemen, and that has nothing to do about real estate. It has nothing to do about flipping properties. All that has to do with the production of a television show. And so we kind of missed the boat there, because the production of a television show is what sells the commercials. And so we can get you to tune in. Nobody really cares about the flip. You get to see the before and after. You say, oh, I could do that, but you missed the whole premise. It's not about a flip. It's not about the construction of a property. It's about producing a television show, get you to tune in so you can watch the commercials. Kind of missed the whole premise there, but that's okay. This is the way it goes, ladies and gentlemen. So understand management, understand the 7-minute rule. And if you can start applying these things, I will make you very successful in many, many ways. Please read my reviews, see what my students are saying, and understand the life experiences that you're going to earn out of this class. And once you take my class, ladies and gentlemen, you never have to pay for it again. You can come back to my class, which many of my students do. You can come back to my class again and again and again, anytime you want, to not only learn, but to build up your confidence as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so there goes my 7 minutes. My time is already up. This hour is done. So Online Real Estate School Incorporated, Online Real Estate School, Inc. We'll talk about Incs, LLCs, syndications, all those sole proprietor stuff. We'll talk about all that in the class as well. So Incorporated, S Corp, C Corps, we'll talk about that. So Online Real Estate School Incorporated. Please go to Online Real Estate School, Inc. Look at my reviews, ladies and gentlemen. Go to my website, onlinerealestatesschoolinc.com. And you can go to my Shopify account. You can go to my Zelle. You can go to my Cash App. You can go to my website. I'm trying to make it easy. You can use just about everything. Yeah, even digital currency, I believe, through my Shopify account. I believe, I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. I got to be careful about that. But I try to make it as easy as I possibly can for my students to make whatever arrangements they need. It's $598 for my class, and I break it down into 2 payments, $299 for Real Estate Fundamentals, which will be a 4-week class, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, either a morning class, 9 to 1, or an evening class, 6 to 10. And then the following month, $299 for real estate fundamental for real estate practice. And so it's $598, and I break it down into 2 monthly payments of $299. I also extend discounts to my students while they're in the class. So once you do sign up for my class, you'll see that you might be able to get some of your money back from me in the class. So again, keep these things in mind, but you'll never know it until you're actually in my class and get to enjoy these rewards that I give to my students in the class. We also have a business class that we do that no other real estate school offers, because when you start out as a real estate agent, you don't have a lot of money. You're starting out a new business. And I want you to understand the things that you can accomplish on a shoestring with very little money to get your real estate business up and running. So no other real estate school really offers these things, ladies and gentlemen. And so there's a lot of benefits. And this is the reason that my students talk so highly about me in my reviews, and why I'm so very, very proud of my reviews and the reviews that I continue to get and receive as they were still coming in. So I'm humbly appreciative of those 7 minutes that you give me, ladies and gentlemen. So I say, when you write a review, it's another 7 minutes. If you can give me 7 minutes of your time, I'll give you not only 75 hours of my time, but even after my class, I will be there for you right down through this lifelong journey of real estate that you're about to venture in. Starting with this free class that I do every Monday to help you out, to give you better resource, better information, get to see me, my style, some of the things that you're going to be learning to help you make a better decision. And I'm going to continue giving you lots of resources so that you can continue making good decisions all the way through your real estate career. So I hope to see you. My next class starts May 9th. I'm only running 3 classes this year. I already got the first class underway. So the first class started February, ends March 30th. So the first class is halfway done. My second class for the year starts May 9th. And then my last class, I believe, is September 7th. I believe, I'm not quite sure offhand, but I'm only running 3 classes this year, ladies and gentlemen. I got a lot of things on my plates. I'm working brokerage. I have my own brokerage. A lot of my students become agents, and then I have to help them earn money and represent others. And so I take them from the classroom right into the field and teach them the business. And so we talk about these things. What you can and can't do in the classroom. I'm not allowed to do any recruiting inside the classroom. That's not what the classroom's designed for. The state doesn't want this to be a recruiting center. It wants it to be a learning center to teach agents. So inside the classroom, we certainly don't talk about it, but what we do talk about is your options. All right, you can work for a broker. You can work for a Fortune 500 company. You can work for a franchise. You can work for developers. You can work for investors. You can work for politicians. There are so many avenues. So in my classroom, we do talk about it. And when you do decide to go through brokerage, I always suggest that you interview at least with 3 to 5 brokers before you make any decisions. So no recruiting is really allowed. All right, because some schools are designed just for that. But anyway, technically, the state doesn't want this to be a recruiting. It's not about that. It's about educating you so that you can make an informed decision. And that's what I base all my training on, ladies and gentlemen, the ability to give you all the ingredients you need to make informed decisions so you can help yourself and your clients in the real estate arena. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so there is my hour. It went fast. I want to thank you once again. Every Monday, 6 to 7, I do this free live streaming class as just a resource to help out those who are looking to do some research and trying to make a decision on which school they should do. Hopefully you decide my class. If you do, I look forward to seeing you in my class, and I look forward to making you a licensed real estate professional. Be safe, be healthy, be happy, God willing. I'll see you all in the future. Enjoy your day, enjoy your evening, enjoy life.